Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Summer Suns by Lee Mandelo. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Lee Mandelo is a transgendered author, so I'll be using they, them pronouns out of respect to them. And they have written for Tor.com. They've done editorial work as well as writing writing articles. This, to the best of my knowledge, is their first novel. And according to the bio I read, they're also doing PhD study at the University of Kentucky. This book, Summer Suns, is essentially a mystery. It surrounds a character named Andrew, who learns that one of his childhood close friends, a man named Eddie, who he grew up with, after Andrew's family adopted Eddie into their family. Eddie was away in Tennessee doing, I believe it was doctoral or graduate level work surrounding oral traditions of old families in the Tennessee and in the Vanderbilt area, dealing with oral traditions as well as dealing with anything related to kind of ghost stories and hauntings and the occult and things of that nature. And Andrew learns that Eddie has killed himself, and so Andrew goes to investigate to find out exactly what happened. They were estranged while Eddie was at school. Andrew and him, though they were very, very close, was slightly estranged, and so it's a mystery of him trying to find out what happened to Eddie. And during this time, he goes there, he meets Eddie's roommates as well as Eddie's advisor at his program, his academic advisor, and he kind of gets initiated into this world as he's kind of discovering this mystery or uncovering this mystery. So that's the book. The book has a lot of supernatural elements to it. There's a lot of weirdness that's kind of going on. The spirit of Eddie is able to communicate with Andrew at certain times, and it's what he calls a revenant or haunt. A revenant, in my understanding, is typically like The Crow, where a character has died and is trying to seek some kind of balance or comeuppance due to the harm that was caused them while they were living. And so that kind of connection is kind of cool. It gives the book kind of this weird feel. I thought the hook of the book was very interesting, and I think it kind of follows the mystery, I thought, in a relatively believable way. And the best part to me is kind of there's a feel of like the Lost Boys. If you remember one of my favorite movies of the 80s, as Andrew is kind of integrating himself with this crew of Eddie's old roommates, who are kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of ruffians. And so he's kind of initiating himself into this world, and I thought that was cool. Some of the things I didn't like as much, I think the pacing, there are some pacing issues, especially in the first 100 pages. There's a lot of scenes where Andrew seems to be kind of very overcome with grief, and he turns to a lot of drugs and alcohol in the book. And so there's a lot of scenes of him just kind of, dealing with hangovers the next day, especially in the first 100 pages. And I felt that could have kind of, been trimmed down a little bit. I also felt that there's certain mysteries in the book that are kind of uncovered, and it takes a long time for you to finally uncover some of these mysteries. And I think it would have been better suited if they had been uncovered a little bit earlier in the book. I don't think it would have ruined anything. I think it would have allowed the book to kind of move at a little bit faster clip. And then I think that there are some plot points I had issues with. My biggest issue, and I thought the book was okay, my biggest issue with the book is really in the marketing of the book. The book is marketed as a dark academia novel. And when I think of dark academia, I think of When We Were Villains, or I don't remember if it's When We Were Villains or We Were Villains. I reviewed it for the channel, so I'll leave that link below if you want to check that book out, or The Secret History. These books that really concern the school as the central part of the novel, and kind of a murder mystery around the school itself. This book really isn't that. There's certainly mystery and there's certainly a death, but the school doesn't really play a central part. I think part of that, I think there's literally one scene in a classroom. So he could have taken this out of the academic setting completely, and I don't know how much would have really been lost in it. The book is really, if anything, it's more about a character coming to the understanding of his own sexuality, And that to me is actually more about what the book is about than the dark academia setting. And I will say, they're kind of both a pro and a con. There is an explicit gay sex scene in the book, and if that bothers you, you may want to stay away from this one. I will say, as opposed to other things where I've read sex scenes, Walk Away being the most recent example, Lee Mandelo does a very, very good job of making it feel organic, and there is a long build-up to the scene, and it tells you something about the characters, and it changes who the characters are in a way that I felt was very, very well done. Now, was it explicit? And could you have lined and veiled it? That's certainly up to your own interpretation, but it is there, and so I want to give people a heads up on that. And I think that the only other thing I can think that, as far as who I would recommend it to, I think it is mostly a mystery is what the genre I would put it in. It's a mystery with kind of supernatural, occult-like elements to it. And I think for that part, it does it okay. I wish there had maybe been a little bit less of a genre mashup. I think he could have jettisoned some of the dark academia stuff, and it may have been a little bit of a cleaner book. And like I said, I wish there was a little bit more of the Lost Boys stuff where he's kind of hanging out with this crew. I enjoyed those things a lot. And then the other thing is just for people who would need to know, I think the book is gory at times. And so if you're someone who has issues with blood and guts and things like that, there's a couple parts that are pretty gruesome. There wasn't anything that was like, it wasn't anything on the level of Stephen Graham Jones. The short story collection escapes me at the moment, but there wasn't anything on that level. Yeah. So overall, I thought it was okay. There's some plot points issues I had with it, and I think as far as the genre, I think it was maybe miscategorized in the marketing. But if those things sound interesting to you, it does market itself as a queer Southern Gothic, and I think the queer part is there. I don't know how. I think the Southern Gothic part is there in parts, and I think the dark academia part is maybe the least well served of those things. So it is a little bit of a mashup, and so if that sounds interesting to you, you may want to check it out. Summer Sons, Lee Mandelo, and then I will be reading, I have it on ebook, the Scott Galloway book Adrift, and I hope to have that up in the next week or so. So if you have read Lee Mandelo, and where I learned this was on the Tor website, they kind of mentioned it. So if you have read Summer Sons by Lee Mandelo, please let me know what your thoughts are. If not, I'll leave a link below to Secret History Review as well as When We Were Villains, if you want to check those out. If you are looking for something that is more, in my opinion, a dark academia and less of a mashup, if you want to check those books out, you can. In the meantime, if you haven't, please subscribe, and I'll have my Twitter link below if you want to check me out there. Until next time, bye.